If there's one man who can help, if there's one man who can help, it's the man coming in here right now.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Fullmetal Alchemist fan guide for the 2003 series. It's going to be roughly covering every episode, so it's going to be about one podcast episode matching the episode length of the series, so hopefully I'll get done in roughly a year. We shall see. This one we're going to be covering is episode 26. We're about halfway through the anime. And so we're at the midway point. The episode is called Her Reason. And this is probably going to be a record for this podcast. A very short episode because honestly, there just is not much to say about this episode. Which is okay because after recording this, I'm kind of tired anyway. But really, this episode honestly kind of made me mad because after the occurrence of Hughes' death, we basically get an episode which is really very light on the plot. I'd say that even within the terms of this mostly original series, deviating from the manga, it almost feels like there was a bit of filler here. Basically, the Elric brothers are on their way to kind of look for an alternate route to the Philosopher's Stone after finding out what happened. They stop at this town. They get into a brief competition testing out the automail, and they run into this girl who was an orphan, essentially, and then was adopted by this automail mechanic, and she has automail, but she's insecure about the strength of her automail, and there's kind of a story relating to her self-confidence, and basically a theme about accepting things about who you are. I mean, there is kind of a nice little idea, I think, about disability, and it's also kind of a little bit of a Winry-centric episode, which admittedly doesn't really seem quite as obvious until towards the end of the episode when she seems kind of upset that Ed was cheating at the little arm wrestling competition, and really we just find out by the end she's kind of insecure and feels like her way of helping Ed now has really been with Ed's automail as their mechanic, but she just was feeling insecure about that, so Ed kind of reassures her it's fine, but that's really about it. Meanwhile, we learn a little bit from Mustang's slight investigation. He finds out there is a bit of a cover-up from someone above him involving Hughes' death, and that somebody high up is involved with some kind of conspiracy with the Philosopher's Stone. So he kind of suspects that, and we know that Izumi and her husband are looking for the Elric brothers. But that stuff just seems a lot more interesting, and it feels like this side story is almost padding. I mean, it's still Fullmetal Alchemist. It's still got some nice scenes, but some nice ideas and some nice themes, but it's kind of another world-building element that we've seen before in many of these other episodes, and I will admit that I know that this series is a bit slower than Brotherhood, and usually that's not a problem for me, but it feels like the timing and pacing of this one, in terms of its placement overall, is just not the best. It was kind of frustrating. The story's fine, but we've seen a lot of these kind of stories already, and I just was a lot more intrigued by the conspiracy with Mustang, and I know we're kind of building up with the fact that Izumi's going to eventually find the Elric brothers in the next couple episodes, and we'll get into some really big ones. And I know you have to have a reprieve after what happened with Hughes, but it almost gives you a little bit of whiplash. So if it wasn't for minor things, I actually feel like you could almost skip this one entirely. But it's fine. It has a nice little story. It's just I kind of question the placement, and I do feel like we've probably seen other ones that, even smaller stories with other side characters that just seem more fleshed out by comparison thus far. So, yeah, it's okay. I was tempted to give it a 5, but it might have eked by with a 6 because it's still Fullmetal Alchemist. It's still a good show. It's just, this one felt like it didn't even focus the entire episode on the side story it was on, so that was just a little bit frustrating. But yeah. That's going to be Her Reason. So if you have any comments about this episode, please let me know below. And of course, thank you for following and listening along. I'll talk to you later. Stay magical.